All right, good morning. You're joining me for the presentation about personal leadership, leading your one permanent party member. This is something that I'm quite passionate about, and hopefully you'll find this presentation helpful, whether your career is within the game industry or you're pursuing anything else within your life. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Renee Gittins. I'm currently the Executive Director of the International Game Developers Association. I also run my own indie studio on the side called Stumbling Cat. And in 2020, Forbes named me on the 30 under 30 list in games. Under the IGDA, it is our mission to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers. And I hope that you will find this presentation will get you there if you're interested or currently pursuing a career within the game industry. We pursue that mission through several different methods, but I like to break it down in that we provide knowledge and resources such as white papers, talks like this, best practices, studies. We also have communities around the globe, and then we advocate for game developers and their best interests so that it's always known what game developers believe in, and all organizations are familiar with how to best support them. So speaking of personal leadership, what is it? I'm going to do the terrible thing of directly reading from a slide here, but Dr. J has said that personal leadership is the leadership of the self. It is the ability to define a direction for your life and move in that direction with consistency and clarity. So basically, personal leadership is leading yourself to your success. And hopefully, through this talk, we can help you do that a little more efficiently. So I actually like to look at business success principles. This is very standard if you're running any business. You need to develop a plan for your business. You have to offer something that's great for your business, whether that is a product or a service. You need to develop your team around supporting that business. You need to market whatever you are providing to other people, and you need to adapt to the challenges that you overcome in your pursuit of that business itself. If we modify this very, very slightly, you can put this as personal success principles. You need to develop a plan for yourself. You need to offer your personal strengths. You have to develop yourself. You need to market yourself. And again, you need to adapt to any challenges that you encounter along the way. So let's talk about developing a plan. It might seem strange to put forward like a business plan for yourself, but I highly recommend looking at it in this manner because it'll provide you with a lot of advantages. First, you need to determine what you hope to gain. Do you want to be a character artist within the game industry? Do you want to ship a successful title at your own studio? Do you want to be a better programmer? All of those are business cases, and this doesn't have to be what you're going to pursue for the next 20 years. It just has to be what you want to pursue right now. Once you've determined what you hope to gain, what your goals are, I recommend looking to KPIs. KPIs are key performance indicators. It is a very businessy term, but basically what KPIs are is they're measurable values to determine how you're achieving your success. So your KPI might be how many pages of a book you read per day. Your KPI might be how many character art pieces you create for your portfolio every month. If you make these measurable goals, not only does it provide you something to look to achieve, but it also provides you with confidence in that you're pursuing along that path properly. If you have these KPIs, you can lean on them when you're feeling like you're not doing enough, because you will have numeric values showing that you are doing enough, that you're meeting the goals that you've set out for yourself, and that those goals are adapted for the path and the things that you hope to achieve. You need to figure out how to sell yourself. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. You need to be able to pitch yourself. You need to be able to say what your values are. We'll go into that deeper in a little bit, but you need to think about what you're good at and how you're going to communicate what you're good at to other people. And you need to actually communicate that to other people. And again, you need to look into a support, what keeps this ongoing, how you can continue to successfully pursue these KPIs, get along your path for these goals, and make sure that you can wake up every day and feel motivated and supported along this path. So as we talk about offering your strengths, this is a slide from one of my very first talks that I ever did called Building and Developing Your Team. And I talked about hiring people. And what I look for when hiring people in order is I first and foremost look for people who are self-starters, people who are going to pursue any new challenge. When they come up to a roadblock or a hurdle, they're going to look to how to overcome it, not stop and look for help. Every single one of you can be a self-starter. I imagine that most of you are self-starters, and that's something to value greatly and to really lean into. Look to overcome challenges, look to pursue new knowledge. I also look for people who are pretty much good teammates, who provide criticism and accept criticism well. We as humans have this really interesting trigger where if we are presented with something that makes us feel excluded from a group, we actually go into flight and fight response. It makes us less able to think logically. It makes us more prone to acting angry. And the more that you can avoid that, and the more you can talk yourself out of that mode, the better that you can actually participate in critical discussions. If you take criticism and don't treat it like a personal attack on yourself, you will be able to think more logically about that criticism in that exact moment and be able to absorb it and apply it to yourself better. This is something that is difficult to overcome because we as humans are biologically prone to acting to criticism with that flight and fight response. But with practice and calmness and taking a step back from when you receive that criticism, you can pursue it more effectively, and of course, always take it with a grain of salt, but it's going to allow you to be a better teammate and allow you to better improve yourself. Because whether you are a 1-person team or a 10-person team or a 100,000-person team, you should always be looking for feedback from other people because they will provide you with perspectives and insight that you won't necessarily be able to access yourself. I then look for people who are compatible with the team, basically people who aren't going to be a jerk to the team. And then finally, I look for competency, if they are skilled in the particular subject or discipline that I am hiring for. And note that that is the last thing. I would much rather have a more junior developer who is a self-starter, who works well with the team, than a more senior developer who's going to be a stick in the mud and fight with everyone and is not willing to learn new technologies or new practices. It is easy to develop someone who is a self-starter, and it is very difficult to develop someone who is stuck in their ways. So how do you develop yourself? I like to talk about two things, particularly in game development, but in many disciplines, there is both breadth and depth to consider. We live in a society of mostly specialists, and so having depth of skills is important. This is being a particularly well-educated artist and knowing lots about color theory and design and anything else related to art. And the way that you can explore your depth of skills is by looking into places with specialized information and resources. You might be looking at a forum that is focused on these skills. You might be reading papers and books focused on this skill set as well. You can go to conferences and find mentors who are within that discipline and can teach you the ways of that discipline. But breadth is also important. Particularly in game development, you are working with many other people who have different specializations, and you're trying to bring all of these together to make a single fun game. One thing that I really love about game development is that it brings together technology, creativity, history, literature, art. All of these components come together to create one experience for people to enjoy. But because you are bringing together so many disciplines, it helps to understand at least a small amount of them, so you know how to work with the people who specialize in those disciplines better. If you're looking to expand your breadth of knowledge, I recommend doing something like a game jam. Game jams, often are only 48 hours or 72 hours. They're very low investment to get involved in, and it is perfectly fine to go into the game jam as a programmer and decide that you want to try game design, or you want to try art, or you want to try figuring out audio and composition for the first time. It will give you a new perspective of the challenges that those disciplines face and give you an understanding of how to better integrate with those disciplines when you are working with them. A programmer who understands an art pipeline is going to better make tools for artists. An artist who understands game design is going to better understand how to create assets to support the game mechanics. You can also expand your breadth of skills by going through something like a tutorial that is going to teach you the basics of a discipline, a game engine, whatever it is. And then when you're at conferences, you can communicate with peers. You can communicate with people from other subjects and ask them, how they pursue that discipline. There are ways to even better build your skills, and I'm going to call these double XP gains. First and foremost, it's taking jobs. I have taken jobs specifically to improve my skill set. I went to Microsoft and worked as the marketing coordinator for Xbox Games with Gold because I wanted to know how publishers worked with indie titles and how they valued different games. And that role itself taught me a lot about marketing as well as how publishers treat different types of game companies. And it is perfectly fine to take a job that interests you so you can learn skills through it. Teaching is a really, really wonderful way to not only support others, but to solidify your own knowledge. When you know the basics of something, it is much easier to truly absorb when you have to explain it to someone else. We all think in different ways, and certainly that allows you to initially understand a concept or a problem, but since other people think differently, through the act of teaching, you have to figure out how to reframe the knowledge that you already have, and it helps cement it deeper. And it reminds you of basics that are often easy to overlook. When you're working with someone who's doing game design for the first time, and you're reminding them of basics of game design, sometimes you look at it and go, wow, I wasn't thinking about that when I was designing my own game, huh? And it just helps you bring you back to the core of your discipline and what you're focusing on. And then finally, doing research and writing papers or writing talks is another way to really develop your skill set. It forces you to take the knowledge that you currently have and bring it to a new point, to expand it further. So with these skills, how do you talk about them? How do you market them? First, with anything that you are trying to market, you need to figure out exactly what that is and who your audience is and what they care about. I recommend creating a personal elevator pitch for yourself. We tell people in game development all the time that you need to have an elevator pitch for your game, 2 to 3 sentences that captures what's unique about it, what's interesting about it, why people would care. And it's great to have that for yourself as well. It can allow you to fall back on it if you are nervous when meeting somebody who is particularly important or that has a high-stakes conversation with you. And you can tailor this to the person that you're talking to. If you're talking to a member of the press, your pitch is probably going to be different than talking to a potential employer. Consider who your audience is and think about what makes you unique in a way that they would care about. Obviously, you can come up and say, hey, I'm a game artist. Like, you should look at my portfolio. But it's much more compelling if you say, yeah, I'm a 3D character artist that is particularly passionate about horror games, and I love making grotesque creatures. People are going to remember that much more than just a plain introduction about what your discipline is. There are many different places where you can then market yourself, and these are often casual, small interactions, but where you're building a reputation based on the things that you do with people from around the industry. You can do interviews with press, you can talk at conferences just like this one, you can work on publishing your own articles or blogs on your website and solidify that you are an expert within your field by creating content. I think something that people often do is they underestimate the value of what they know. When we know something very well, we consider that everyone else knows that thing as well, and it's not actually the case. You can be someone who is one day ahead of someone else within the industry, and the knowledge that you've gained over that day can provide the person who's a day behind you with insight that's going to help them. If you are new within the industry, you can create materials for someone who's just starting. If you're 10 years in the industry, you can create materials for anyone 9 years or less. And the creation of these materials themselves is not going to only help you build your skills, but is going to advance the skills of the people who come after you. Obviously, social media is really big these days. You don't have to use social media aggressively. I use Twitter, for example. I don't read Twitter. I post tweets about things that I do on Twitter, or maybe insights. And it is a wonderful way to build your reputation. One of my friends is a wonderful composer and sound designer, and he was looking for additional contracts. And for 2 weeks, every other day, he posted something about game design or audio design in his LinkedIn profile. And at the end of those 2 weeks, he had 4 job offers. Talking about your skills and what you know and things you find interesting is going to allow people to recognize you as an expert, no matter how far along that path you currently are. So something you might have noticed is that a lot of the ways to build your skills are quite similar to the ways to market your skills, and those really feed into each other. The more that you are creating content for others, the more your name is being known out there. If you write a paper that other people reference, they will come to you as an expert when they are looking for that advice. If you are an artist and you want to talk about basics of concept art, then people are going to see that even if they're early in their career and remember you as an expert within that field. Another nice thing is these materials you're creating, as I said before, help the next people lift themselves up and pursue their specialization and follow your path as well. If you're looking for a place to do these things and to build your skills, I recommend checking out the IGDA. We have chapters literally everywhere around the globe. They host game jams and meetups and postmortems and talks. It's a great place to dip your toe in the water with giving your first talk for the first time and for connecting with others in the industry. Networking is super important within games because despite it being a $187 billion industry, it's actually quite small in terms of the people that you meet. Yeah, there's a few 100,000 game developers out there, but if you're going to conferences and meeting with people, those people are going to help you with your career for the rest of your life. The IG also has special interest groups, and this is old. We have 36 special interest groups, and they are based on advocacy, discipline, and affinity. So for affinity groups, if you're a woman in games, for example, we have a women in games special interest group. We have an LGBTQ plus special interest group. And then we have many discipline-focused special interest groups. We have game writers, game designers, game art, even quality assurance. If you are looking to improve your skills and network, these are all completely free communities for you to join, and you can connect with others, get advice, have people review your portfolio, and build up that network that's going to support you for the rest of your career. So the final thing to really talk about is adapting to challenges. We all are going to face failures. No career is perfect. No person is perfect, and we're going to mess up. And there's the age-old saying, it's not how you fail, it's how you overcome your failures that defines you. And that's absolutely the case. You shouldn't even necessarily look at failures as failures. They're mere setbacks and can potentially put you on a better path. When I was initially getting into the game industry about a decade ago, I was pursuing a associate producer position at a very renowned studio. And due to some internal changes at that studio, that position was taken away from me 36 hours before I was supposed to start. I had moved, I had signed a year lease, and I was absolutely crushed. I thought it was the worst thing to ever happen. I thought it was my big break into the game industry, and I would be happy from there on out. And when I look back on that, it's one of the best things that happened to my career. Certainly, I could have gone up the production pipeline within that studio, but I would have never been as good of a leader as I am today because that failure forced me to find another path. I taught myself programming, started my own game studio. I had so many more learning lessons and experiences because of that failure, because of that setback, than if that path had been smooth. And when we do face those failures, I recommend looking at them to see what you can learn from them. Have a personal postmortem. Talk to yourself about, what put that situation in place. Was there anything that you could have done differently? Is there any way that you can prevent it from happening again within the future? Stepping back and looking at this from a logical perspective will also help you absorb it from a mental and emotional one. Looking at what you can do next time will give you hope. It will give you motivation to pursue improvements in yourself and the way that you approach your life. I also recommend talking to other people, getting their advice and input. Particularly within the game industry, we often face imposter syndrome, the feel that we are somehow undeserving of where we are. And that's something that I face a lot. And the way that I overcome that is by surrounding myself with people that I trust greatly and whose input that I trust and can respect. When I am faced with personal challenges, I go to them for advice and for help. If I am not feeling confident in myself, I will talk to them and express my concerns, and they will provide me their honest feedback, which is often very complimentary and helps me remember that there are things that I'm good at and there are ways that I am currently succeeding. So not only does building a network help you understand other disciplines and help you market yourself and give you career opportunities, but it provides you with a lot of personal support. It provides you with people that you can rely on for help when you're stuck on a strange Unity bug, but also when you're just having a hard time finding your own value. But when you talk to these people, often they will give you a lot of advice. Many of it is great advice, but don't expect other people's solutions to work 100% for you. It is perfectly fine for someone else to be like, I wake up at 4 a.m. every day, go on a run, and work on my game for 3 hours before work, and that doesn't work for you. Maybe you're more of a night owl, maybe you're more creative after 11 p.m., and it is perfectly fine to take what works for you and lean into that and listen to other people's advice, but not necessarily implement it yourself. So the final benefit of stepping back and looking at your life and your success as a business of some sort is recognizing that you are your best resource. Your time is your best resource. Your mental health is an important resource. If you're a manager, you're never going to expect your team to work 80 hours a week. So why would you expect yourself to work 80 hours a week? You need to be kind and gentle with yourself, because if you force yourself into burnout, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be as creative as you should be. It has been shown that we as humans, after working 6 weeks in a row at 60 hours a week, are as effective as if we were just working 40 hours. So recognize how far you're pushing yourself and be gentle and kind to yourself. Lean on others for that support if you need to, but also use your KPIs and recognize that you are having your successes and that you're pursuing along your path. If you feel like you're having a bad week, It is perfectly fine to take a personal mental health week and work on anything that brings you joy. Step back from your work. We as people often are too harsh on ourselves. And so seeing yourself as a teammate as much as your own self is going to allow you to be more gentle. Hopefully you found this talk helpful. There's a lot of things that each of us can do to continue along our path of growth and self-improvement, both in terms of how we connect with others and how we support ourselves. And I wish you all the best of luck on your journeys. We do have time for a few questions, so if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll point at you. You can shout them out if you'd like. Go ahead. Absolutely. So the question was, how has the IGDA evolved during the pandemic to continue to support developers during this time? And that's a really wonderful question. Obviously, the IGDA in the past has been very focused on in-person events. We have local chapters around the globe, and we attend events such as GDC and Gamescom to provide mentor cafes and networking events and other talks. With the pandemic, we understood that there was a need within the game development industry for support, particularly for developers switching to remote work. So we have created a lot of virtual events and resources to support game developers. Right after the pandemic started, around April of 2020, we launched the Game Development Crisis Conference, which is a free conference. All the talks are uploaded online if you're interested, to support game developers through crisis. It talked about how to switch your technology to working remotely, how to set up those pipelines. It also talked about how to work with your team, how to manage a remote team, how to work with the team. It went into how to work with a community that's going through crisis, how to properly manage a community that is having additional struggles. And it also talked about mental health and self-care and gave tips and tricks on how to keep yourself in the best mindset through these times. We also launched our Global Mentorship Program. Our Global Mentorship Program is a program open to any IGDA members that allows them to find mentors anywhere around the world. This is a program that not only helps people connect in these times where we have less in-person networking, but it allows people who are in areas that have a less established game industry find mentors with more experience. Mentorship is something that I highly recommend engaging in, both from a mentee and a mentor perspective. As I said before, teaching is extremely important, and so figuring out how to support others is going to help you solidify your own skills. We've run about 100 live webinars over the last year as well, and we've really leaned into creating an inclusive online community. We have a Discord with 4,300 game developers. So if you're interested in connecting with an online community, it's a great place to start. There's an advice channel where you can post your portfolio and get feedback. There's conversation about current news within the game industry. There's job postings there as well. So over this last year, we as the IGDA have really leaned into our online community, our worldwide community. And I think that this pandemic has been really difficult for all of us, but it has also given so many opportunities for people who aren't normally able to travel for conferences or who have limited connections within their local industry to meet others online and to connect. And so we're doing everything we can to support that. Go ahead. Awesome. Yeah, so the question is, what have I struggled with early in my career and how did I overcome it? The thing that I struggled with most are my soft skills. I was a super self-important, angsty teenager back in the day, and I didn't realize the importance of working well with other people. Over the last 10 years, I've learned programming, I've learned best discipline skills when it comes to production, I've learned many things within the game industry itself. But the thing that I have focused on most and that I read books about most and that I've leaned into most is my ability to work collaboratively with other people. I think soft skills are something that we don't appreciate as much as we should as a society. Even the term soft skills feels less, appealing than hard skills, technical skills. But I like to think of soft skills as these nebulous, watery, hard to hold things that are so very important because they help everything we do flow together. I mean, we live in a society, right? We're working with other people constantly. So the way that I worked on my soft skills outside of reading many, many leadership books, and I'm reading a book right now called Crucial Conversations, is self-reflection. It is thinking about those situations that you've been in, how you reacted to those situations, and thinking, could I have done that better? What was I thinking at that time? How could I have better supported my friends or my partner or my coworkers? I think that leaning into soft skills has provided me with many benefits. First of all, I have a wonderful network of friends and supporters within the industry when truthfully I grew up and I didn't have many friends at all. And that's clearly the biggest benefit for myself personally. But it's also enabled me to have conversations where I can create connections that are beneficial to my career or who are going to support the people that I care about. So I definitely think that, yeah, soft skills were the thing that I was lacking most and the thing that I've worked on the most to develop. Well, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead. Okay. The question is, do I think that remote work is going to be normal, or how are studios going to adapt to this going forward? So what I've seen within the industry is that many people really enjoy remote work and appreciate the extra time and flexibility that it gives them. But sometimes conversations can be difficult, creative conversations. What is it, 15 years ago, the open office environment became very popular. The reason that it became popular is because it allows for passive communication in between different people. You can look over someone's shoulder and see what they're working on and help that be part of your knowledge. I know some studios who really, really appreciate that and those creative communications and passive communications and are requiring people to come on site as soon as it is safe. But most people are resisting that, so we're seeing a lot of studios switch to either fully remote or hybrid, where you can come in a few days or not. I think that we're going to see actually a split within the game industry there, where there are some studios who are going to support remote and hybrid work, while others are going to require people to come into the office. And it's going to be just another part of culture that you're looking for. It's important to remember when you're doing an interview with a company to find a position that you are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And you should ask important questions about their work culture, about their feelings about remote and hybrid work, to ensure that you are joining a place that is going to support you in the ways that you need as much as your skill set is going to support them. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your GDEX.